The Wizard of Oz from 1939. I had never watched this movie in full, which
Wow.
is probably shameful to admit as a movie lover on a movie podcast, but it just is. But quick logline if nobody knows, young Dorothy Gale and her dog Toto are swept away by a tornado from their Kansas farm to the magical land of Oz and embark on a quest with three new friends to see the wizard who can return her to her home and fulfill the other's wishes. Starring obviously Judy Garland, Frank Morgan, Ray Bolger, and directed by a million directors, but primarily Victor Fleming and King Vidor. So this movie obviously is sort of canonized. What can I even say about this movie?
Hmm.
And for whatever reason, I just always, this was not a childhood classic that played at home. We were more
Interesting.
of a Mary Poppins and Sound of Music kind of household. So this movie kind of never hit us when we were
Hmm.
growing up.
Hmm.
And then when I got older, I just was like, oh, this is a kids movie. And I just never watched it fully. I obviously seen sequences. Everybody knows the red shoes and all of that, right? But just
Hmm.
never sat down and made time for it. And then this year, just sort of randomly, me and my boyfriend, we just said that, oh, let's just watch it. And he obviously gave me shit for the fact that I'd never seen this movie. 'Cause it's like, how can you claim to be a movie lover if you've not seen The Wizard of Oz? I was like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I get it. And it sort of blew me away, in all its glory and its message and its meaning and how beautifully it's done in his performances. But the thing that really resonated with me, which is kind of the message of the movie, which is that there could be stuff going around you in the world, in your situations and circumstances, but ultimately you have to fight your own demons. You have to go out there and find the head and the heart and the soul and the might and the courage and overcome all that. And I think this year was a big year in terms of transitions from a work standpoint and
Hmm.
things, looking up and then not looking up, or things changing and taking a different direction, but then apparently that direction is not the one that you wanted to be on. It's sort of classic life, but I think we all, especially post pandemic, I feel like are settling in, transitioning still, I think. And
Hmm.
whether it has to do with the pandemic and the world stopping down or no, but or just the age that we are in, the beginning of the 40s decade is an interesting time period in a lot of people's lives,
Hmm.
and that's the decade we are in now.
Yes, yeah, you can age us.
Yeah.
It's okay. Yeah, we are old. Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that happening too, but yet the message of the movie really hit me hard this time, and I'm in a way, I feel lucky that I watched this movie now, to kind of fully get it. I'm sure as a kid or as a younger person, I would have enjoyed it for all its technical glory and brilliance and music and singing and all of it. But this time it was the full package. But before I go on, I know you watched this movie and love it.
Yeah, this movie is, at least in the States, was on TV all the time, and
Yeah.
a movie that myself and my two sisters would watch all the time as, really young children. So I had seen this, dozens of, times, maybe even like close to 100, right? Like growing up, it was
Wow.
like always on. Then like I didn't watch it for a long time, and then came back to it twice in the last 20 years, just as more of, I watched it once after college, then once about 10 years ago until this rewatch. So it's not a movie that I watch a lot as a movie now as an adult, but every time
Mm,
I see it as an adult, now this is like the third time, it just strikes me more as like what a marvel the film is, like from a production standpoint. Like the
mm,
set design is incredible, especially now that you can see this, restored in HD. Watching this
yeah.
as a kid, it's on a VHS copy or on, TNT or something. You can't really see a lot of these amazing painted backgrounds, and the visual
Mm,
effects are just incredible. Like the flying monkey sequence, a lot of the stuff with Glinda when she comes in the bubbles and things like that.
yeah.
Just the visual
Amazing.
effects are incredible. The smoke, with the Wicked Witch sort of appears and disappears. So at that, I've sort of now been appreciative of this movie a lot more on a technical level than I was as a kid. You're just like, oh, this is cool. Like, you just like the action and the, you get like the allegories of, oh, these things are in you all the time. Like you say, the scarecrow wants a brain, but then throughout the course of the film, he's always the one to work out
Hmm.
plans. So he actually always had the brain the whole time, and that's sort
Hmm.
of like the message of the film too, that it's all these things are inside you, even though you think you
Right.
might not, have the courage. It's deep inside you. You have to unlock it. No one can really give you
Yeah.
courage, right? Which is the message of the film. Yeah, no, it was fun to rewatch it now, third time as an adult, and just continue to appreciate what a sort of lightning in a bottle that they captured here. Like you said, multiple directors. There's a lot of problems in the set and things like that. Like usually there are with these classic films, but
Yeah.
it is a movie that is just has something really unique and special about it. So it was fun to watch this again.
And we haven't called out Judy Garland specifically. I mean, this performance, I mean, now we know the background of sort of how hard it was for her and
Hmm.
everything that went on in the production of the movie, but she's just so incredible
Hmm.
as a performer. And then, I mean, Over the Rainbow, when that song comes, you just can't help but just weep
Hmm.
because it's just her voice just has so much power. And maybe now because we know so much about her life, her legacy and everything, but it just hit me so hard just watching that. And it's not just the song and the singing, but like you said, all the technical elements as well and what this means. It's just such a multi-layered movie, which I don't even know if they were intending for it to be that way because the production story of this movie, like you said, is so troubled,
Hmm.
which is why it's sort of hard to know that how intentional was this versus what it ended up being, because this could have just been like a fun children's movie, and maybe that's how it was regarded as when it
Hmm.
first came out. It's only over time you see all these different layers of the movie, and it'll always be in our consciousness. I think it's evergreen, and it'll always appeal to anybody and everybody of all ages. And that's sort of the power of this movie. And such a movie feels like comes along every few decades, and there's a reason why this movie stands the test of time.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's like a once in a generation sort
Yeah.
of film classic, and it definitely is on if you ask a random person anywhere around the world, oh, name like 10 movies, this probably would show up, along with some like, Star Wars or what have you, right? They would say a couple
Yes.
things, an Avatar, right? But people would say Wizard of Oz. Like it definitely has that much resonance worldwide. I mean, maybe not so much in India, I guess. So this wasn't on TV a lot in India growing up, or just you just
I guess
wasn't,
not.
huh?
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's a bummer that it didn't hit me then, or I guess my parents had not seen it either because they really made it a point for us to watch Mary Poppins and
Hmm.
these kind of Hollywood musicals from the 60s, but not so much this one
Hmm.
for whatever reason.
Yeah, maybe it didn't make it in terms of their generation. It
Yeah,
had resonance to them, so they're not, they want to share the
didn't get
movies that
passed
they
down.
loved growing up, right? So that wasn't something that passed down. Versus like my parents would tell me about how, they would watch this on TV and it would come on TV like, every holiday season, like
Right.
Thanksgiving or Christmas, they'd play it on TV, even though they grew up with black and white TV. So that famous scene when the transitions into color, like you would
Uh,
never notice that on TV
uh,
because it was a black and white TV. So they were talking to me about, oh, the first time they realized that was even a thing, which is an incredible VFX shot too of how they
Amazing.
painted the set to look sepia, used the stand-in for Judy Garland in a black and white costume for that so the camera can see it in black and white when she opens the door and the camera goes into the color world, then the actual Judy
Unbelievable.
steps in because you couldn't do that any other way. Just absolutely brilliant. But it was funny, like they didn't see that until they finally saw it in theaters like years later, because on TV it just all looked black and white to them. The other thing that just struck me on this for some reason rewatch. I mean, I always love Toto. Toto's always the best.
Mhm.
But in this rewatch of like this dog is so well trained. The
Oh my gosh.
stuff that his name was Terry in real life. The stuff that Terry would do is just amazing. Like from jump, like this amazing leap that the dog does, like off of in the witch's castle to like go and then find the three the Tin Woodsman and the Scarecrow in
Hmm.
line to save Dorothy. Like Toto does like so he's even pulling at the curtain to reveal that the wizard's a fraud. I don't know. I just appreciated the dog acting a lot more this time out. Toto's just is amazing. I love
Toto
him.
is amazing and very cute. Yeah, I also have to call out just the friendship aspect. I know all the characters are all just inside you and all part of Dorothy, but it's
Well,
just so
we don't. Who knows? Who knows?
who knows, right?
Who
That's
knows?
one
Yeah.
interpretation, right?
Right. Yeah.
But just this is the friendship aspect of all of them together is
Hmm.
also just so earnest and sweet and moving. Another reason why the movie works, and another reason why it's such a lightning in the bottle, because it's just so hard to for our jaded selves now to have this kind of sweet, earnest kind of friendship
Right.
depicted. on screen, that they're just genuinely excited to just be with each other and care for each other. And now this would be labeled saccharine, or I guess we wouldn't be able to do it the
Right.
way this is done, you know?
Hmm.
And then I guess the last thing I would say after hearing you just talk about this, my mission for the next year is to watch this movie on the big screen.
Mm.
If it plays somewhere, I don't know if there is a 70 millimeter print of this or no, but I
Yeah,
guess not.
yeah, they didn't have this in 70, but
Yeah,
usually it plays at least some, in LA, it'll play
has to
somewhere.
be.
There was, I think even this past fall, there was screenings of the Academy Museum of this. I mean, this, you will be able to see this at the big screen. And actually, I don't think I've ever seen this in a theater, which would
Okay,
be a
well, we
cool
should
thing to
make
do.
a
Yeah, we should try to have
we should do it.
A Wizard of Oz get together. One other point I'll just make too is in terms of this year and this movie for me, there is a little bit of a connection between 2023 and this movie where I stumbled across this theory that's been around since the 60s, apparently, but I had never seen it before about a sort of hidden message in this film, which I will say, like, growing up too, there was always the, connection you can make between Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, which is like a
Yeah.
record, and you play it in the same way. What you hit play on the record as you're hitting play on the movie, and it sort of like narrates what's going on. It's sort of a fun, sort of druggy kind of like, look, everything it's, all these connections, man. So I've done that. I've known about that. It was fun to actually rewatch this movie now that I know this theory where the reason why the book was written, it was a kid's book that was written in 1900 by Frank L. Baum. And he was, at that time in America, there was a big battle over the gold standard versus including silver as well to increase the money supply. And there's all these debates for like decades over this. And this movie is essentially, or the book, and then the movie, I guess, is an allegory about the fight over bimetallism, it was called. So it's like
Mm,
Dorothy stands in for the average American, Scarecrow's the farmer, Tin Man is industrial workers, the Lion is William Jennings Bryan, who's a big politician in the U.S. at this time. That was his nickname. The Munchkins are like citizens of the US. You're sort of a mob that sort of doesn't really know which way to go. The Wicked Witch of the East is Wall Street, and they're trying to
mm,
control the money supply by only having the gold standard. That's why it's a yellow brick road. And
mm.
Oz is Washington, D.C., and the wizard is the politicians who are sort of like lying and they're frauds and they're telling you things even though they actually have no power and they don't kind of aren't really helpful for you at all, much like the wizard in this movie doesn't do anything. He just claims he is, and then it's really
Right, it's
like
not even real.
it's not even real, right? It's all about you. And in the book, she had silver slippers instead of ruby ones. So it was once she realized the power of combining silver and gold together, that's what would lead her to prosperity. And I read this and I was like, oh, this is kind of silly. And then I watched the movie this time, like through that lens, and I was like, whoa, like I do
Makes
see all the
sense.
hidden messages in this. This all makes sense. And then, the big one at the end of this article that I read about this in the middle of the summer, I just stumbled across this, is that, it's called The Wizard of Oz. And OZ is the abbreviation for ounces, which is how they, gold and silver is all done in ounces. So the whole thing is
Wow.
supposed to be this like political allegory that, always went over my head. And it was fun to actually watch this movie for the podcast after having read this article because I didn't actually have time to go back and like, oh, I was thinking like I should watch Wizard of Oz again just through this lens of bimetallism and do I believe this theory could be true? And I think it could. I was like, I see
That's
this as
amazing.
a new message of this movie that
Yeah,
it's kind of fun.
that's amazing. I mean, that's the beauty of these classics, right? That I mean, who knows if this is how it was meant to be,
Right, of course, yeah, but it's
but the
fun, right?
fact that that's what the beauty of the classics is, that now that they're in the canon, we all get to kind of dissect them, analyze them, apply different theories to them, which I think further strengthens the power of these classic films, right? Because
Mhm.
they're so multidimensional in that sense.
Right, you can
Um,
kind of attack them from all these different angles, right? And again,
exactly.
this new political message I never saw in the film before. And now, like, I want to go back and like watch the film more, looking for these messages, much like kids did with that Dark Side of the Moon album. Like, I remember that being a big thing in high school. People talking about that. It's like, oh, you got to do it, man. It's so cool. Like, the songs match what's going on,
I
which
love
was
it.
true too. Actually, it was
Yeah, I'm
interesting to kind
sure.
of see that. Which obviously that was not, I don't think,
Intentional, obviously. No, it
intentional
can't
for
be.
Pink Floyd, but it's still
No.
fun. But like you said, it just shows the power of few movies I think could attain a status like this, where we're still talking about these hidden messages and themes and syncing it up
Right.
to this and that. I mean, that's Wizard of Oz is probably half a dozen movies that fall into that category, and it just is it's a
Totally.
special film.
And just such a blueprint and gold standard for movies of this kind, but all kinds, because it's such a classic story.
Right.
Like, it's fun to watch this movie in the year of Barbie, which, I enjoyed
Yeah.
Barbie and have, but it's a certain parts that maybe didn't quite land on me as well. But it's amazing to see Greta and the team kind of build this entire Barbie land out of, cloth and
Hmm.
paint and tin
Hmm.
and everything. It's a great kind of, and she talks about Wizard of Oz and how influential that movie was for her in general, but also for Barbie. So it's kind of fun that we are coming back in a way to get out of the CG jail that we've been in for the
Hmm.
last decade and do stuff practically. And it's just a different textural thing that it brings, not just to the movie, but also to the performances, because it's real, right? Like, we are all
Right.
humans after all.
Hmm.
If you're walking through Yellow Brick Road and watching all this around you, you're going to act and react differently for sure.
Hmm. Definitely. Yeah. No, it
Yeah,
was fun to revisit this, and it's amazing to hear this is the first time you've seen it. So that's
I
great that
know.
it
Crazy.
that it lived up to, I guess, I'm assuming you had a
Oh,
hype in your
yeah.
mind of like what this would be, right?
It beat the hype, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I just was like, oh, how good could this be?
Hmm.
And it was amazing.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.